Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. I hope everybody had a nice, beautiful, joyous Christmas. And there we continue. After all, it's just a day like another day. Shall we start straight away? Is there anybody who would like to come in? You're welcome to come. If this is not the case, then I start with a question Mari sent me. She said she won't be able to be up. She's in America today. Sometimes she comes, but I can understand. It's 2:30 in the morning when we start. She asked, how do we avoid getting hooked in feeling good in meditation when it's getting silent? Is there at all a difference between when it's silent or when it's not silent? I have different times talked about not to get attached to the experiences that come in meditation, and I guess because of that this question is coming. She says also, yes, when it's getting peaceful, then naturally it's more there is more a pleasant sensation in the body. And then she catches herself to try to bring that sensation about when starting meditation. Okay. Naturally, when you are more peaceful, when you are more relaxed, there's a much more pleasant sensation in the whole system. That's for granted. And why is that? Because when we are agitated, when our mind goes left and right and everywhere, then most of the time there's a lot of tension also. And when there is tension, there is very little of that inner joyousness, that inner beauty that can come to the surface. The quieter we get, it's like the more transparent the mind becomes. And it starts to shine through that joyousness of existence. Not necessarily an ecstatic experience, but just a peaceful joyousness, which is a pleasant sensation physically also. Produces a pleasant sensation physically. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is that we are getting then hooked on that level and fix our attention on the fact that it's pleasant and get stuck there. But that doesn't mean we have to reject when that nice experience comes. We don't have to reject it. Just don't get attached on that level and get stuck, but continue with whatever you have used as a means to come that far. Continue. If you do inquiry, then you continue inquiry. But who is experiencing this nice sensation? If you are watching the breath, then even when it's getting nice and peaceful, you still continue watching the breath. Whatever you have been using to come that far, you just continue. That doesn't mean we have to reject a nice experience. when it's getting quite quite pleasant, when it feels quite good, then there we can be vigilant not to fall into the trap to think, after all, I'm having a good meditation. I got somewhere. After all, finally, I'm attaining something. But okay, accept happily that it's not unpleasant. We don't have to run away from nice experiences, but we don't have to run after them. Let them come, let them go. And naturally, she asked then if that nice feeling is not the touchstone to measure whether we are meditating good, then what is? We don't have to measure whether we are having a good meditation, but it is an indication when you become more peaceful that you are going in the right direction. And then when that indication comes, don't get so worked up about it and think, great, wonderful, I'm getting there. And just hook the attention there and try to hold that. Just accept, wonderful, great. It's going in the right direction, and continue whatever you have been doing to go deeper, to get subtler. And then there is not a problem. So Mari, I hope your question is answered. You need not find a touchstone to see, to judge whether your meditation is good or not. Just meditate and be as quiet, as calm as you can, and don't stop, even when it's nice. Just don't stop, and then there is absolutely no problem. Okay, that's much about that question of Marie. Is there anyone who would like to come in now? Please come in. Okay, then I'm saying something practical. Well, we are still in the midst of this COVID story. Many people are afraid, again more, because the new strand of the virus seems to be very infectious. And I just want to share, somebody sent me a video, actually sent a Tsuda, that video of an Ayurvedic doctor who has a hospital somewhere in India with quite a number of patients being there all the time. And he said what they did was a very simple thing. And he himself had doubts in the beginning whether it will do something. And that is, they just inhale vapor 2 times a day. You can just boil water, or you can have an inhaler and inhale vapor in the morning and in the evening. And his recommendation is you breathe in 10 times the vapor through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And then you 10 times inhale the vapor through the mouth and exhale through the nose. And that's all. And you can just take water, or if you prefer, you can put any scented oil in it to make it a bit more pleasant. You can put eucalyptus oil, or anything, or nothing. And he says they had now for months all the time COVID patients in their hospital. They were coming in infected. They are being treated. It helps them to overcome it faster. And all the workers in that hospital, they are doing this inhalation of the vapor, and in all the months, in spite of being in contact with COVID patients, day in and day out, not a single one caught the virus. So he was very surprised himself about that success. And he recommends anyone to do so. He goes as far as saying that if everyone would inhale vapor twice a day, new infections would cease within no time. Anyhow, I don't know whether this is true, but it seems to be such a simple thing and seems to be effective that I felt like sharing what I heard from that. Actually, Sudha and I, we start to inhale. So if anybody feels inspired by what I have been telling, you're welcome to do so. After all, it's simple, it doesn't take time, it doesn't cost anything. Okay, now I stop. Anybody? Please come in if you feel like coming in.
Werner?
Hoi. Hallo.
Hoi. Hoi. Hariom.
Hariom, hariom.
Ik moet je op English reden.
Yeah, it's better English for all the other people.
I have a question about vasanas.
Vasanas, yes.
Yeah. First of all, I want to know if my understanding of vasanas is right. I understand it like vasanas are the tendencies of the mind and behavior patterns.
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
So how, I mean, as longer I do my regular meditation, as more I can see these vasanas.
Yes.
But I can't stop them.
Yeah.
So what to do?
What to do about them?
Yes. For
Actually,
example, just one very big vasana of mine is impatience.
Impatience.
Impatience, yes.
Yes.
And this one really struggles me. So, okay, now you tell me.
Right. You know, you become more aware when you meditate and you say you start to see those vasanas, those tendencies. Actually, vasana is a neutral word and it's usually used very negative, that whatever is bad is vasana. But vasana simply means a tendency. And it can be a positive, helpful tendency. And then the Vedantins call it vasana, and the Sankhya philosophy calls it samskaras. And in South India, it has become the habit that the good ones they call samskaras and the bad ones they call vasanas. But actually, it's the same. It's neutral, the word. It just means tendency. And if you go deeper in your meditation, you become more aware, then naturally you become more aware of those tendencies. And it feels they don't go. Sometimes it may even feel they get worse because you become more aware what really is going on. But actually, it's not true. It does change. Those vasanas, they came about because we kept on repeating certain actions, certain reactions, certain ways of feeling, certain behavior patterns again and again and again, and it becomes a habit. And then the habit is pushing us to repeat the same thing. And the more we do that without being aware of it, the stronger it becomes. And then when you become aware of it, then that momentum is there. They have their own power, those habits, those vasanas. And even if you see them and decide, I don't want to get swept away by them, then the situation comes and there we go again. But it's different if you are aware what is happening. The very fact that you feel, oh no.
Not again.
Not again, but still it has happened, then that does something. And actually the vasana becomes weaker by being aware of it. And gradually they will disappear. But it helps. If something happens, if, okay, you talk about impatience, meaning that when you are awaiting things and you are impatient, or when you are with people and they are behaving in certain ways that you are reacting impatiently.
Especially with people, yes.
Right. And you may decide, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then somebody gets on your nerve and then boom, it happens again. Without your being conscious, without being aware, but after a moment, you will become aware.
Yeah. Sometimes even while it is happening, but I can't stop.
Yeah. Then even when it is happening, then when it's gone, when the moment is gone, then you can come back and say, okay, got me again. No point in feeling bad about yourself. No point in wasting your energy judging yourself. Simply, okay, the vasana is still there, got me again. But now, when the moment is over, now I'm detaching from it. Because what is usually happening in a strong emotional situation, even when the situation is gone, we keep on turning it around in our head, and it's going on and on and on. And then when you become aware, the situation is gone, the person is gone, and still I'm turning it around, there you can stop. You just turn your attention 180 degrees and come back to the present, timeless, now, and see how your experience is affected by those thoughts, by those emotions. See what it is doing to your body and relax instead of keeping the tension. See what it's doing to you energetically and relax instead of keeping the tension. And then you can also renew the intent that, okay, I want to be more alert and I want to get rid of this vasana that always creates problems. That's good to make that sankalpa, is it called here? That's a strong intent. I don't want, but then when it's happening again, in spite of that, don't spend time judging yourself. Just see, got me again. But the moment you become aware that you're really still into that thing, there you don't encourage it. And then gradually you will catch yourself earlier and earlier and earlier. And eventually you will have that presence of mind that when you see it coming in the situation, you may already be able to just sort of like step a step back and let it pass like a puff of air. But vasanas may have been there for a long time, maybe longer than a lifetime. And so sometimes, even when we watch them again and again, they may take their time. So don't be impatient with yourself about the impatience. Just when you catch yourself, don't encourage it. And renew the intent. Okay, I want to liberate myself from that compulsion to act in a certain way. And in the end, then you have the freedom that sometimes you may still decide, at this moment, it's perfectly valid that I'm reacting that way to make a point. But then you can decide whether you want to or whether you want not, instead of helplessly being pushed to do so.
Yeah.
I was already 5 years with Amma and had been spending my time sitting on my bum day and night. And I felt, I felt there was a little improvement in peacefulness, but compared to all that investment, there's nothing happening. I used to complain about it to Amma, and I said, what's the point? What's the point? I'm sitting, sometimes it's peaceful, then I'm getting up, somebody insults me, and puff, I'm reacting like I all the time reacted. And she said, but the difference is now you are aware of it.
Yeah.
That makes the whole difference. If you are aware of it and then treat it properly, not start to fall into a negative mood and think I'm never getting anywhere, it's not you, it doesn't help, but just see, okay, it's there. So the moment you become aware, you detach. You see what it is doing to you physically and relax. And intend, okay, I try to be more vigilant to catch it earlier next time. And gradually, what has been seemed impossible in the beginning becomes easier and easier.
Yeah, in some situations it has become better already. For example, when I'm driving car and somebody is, I don't know, doing something which I don't like, and usually I do, hey, fuck you!
And now you don't call names anymore.
This one has gone already.
Okay.
But you know, Werner, what I find quite difficult is when the situation is over.
Yeah.
And then the mind is occupied with, oh my God, now again I did it, and da 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 da.
Right.
And then this to, how you say, to relax, and this is quite difficult. And now I have a trick, and I want to ask you if this trick is good or not. Okay. It helps me when I, in this moment, just start to say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I concentrate on the mantra, and then I can let it go after a while.
Sure, if it works, wonderful.
Yeah, that works.
Right. If you have an affinity to mantras, then this is very useful, very powerful, actually. It's very good to do so. It's not for everybody to do mantras. In the West, that for many people, this seems to be a funny thing to just repeat a word or some words over and over. But if you have a connection with mantras, it's very, very helpful. Good.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. Right.
Thank you, Werner.
You're welcome. Wish you well for your... Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to come? And you are here. See? 36 people. Somebody will have to say something.
Hello, Werner.
Hello, Dayal.
Nice to see you.
Nice
I
to
start
see you.
again reading book of Yogananda, Autobiography of Yoga.
Yes.
Do you know about this book?
Yes.
Yes, it's very inspiring.
I mean, it's something like 50 years ago that I read it, but yes.
Wow. Yeah, it's very inspiring me, this book. And a lot of miracles he described in this book.
Right.
But I never come across to his teaching. Can you shortly tell what is Kriya Yoga, how he advised to practice?
I have never been initiated in Kriya Yoga. So they are doing a lot of techniques along with the breath, and then with movements with the head. And actually there are different lines. Somebody told me they are tapping themselves on the ribs while breathing and doing all kinds of things. So I cannot tell you what is Kriya Yoga in that line, because they are very specific techniques, and if you want to practice them, you should be initiated into them by somebody who is entitled in that line to initiate you.
Yeah. After this book, I wonder why it's not so popular as Vipassana, for example, because Goenka cannot say any big miracles, but Yogananda really very spiritual.
Right. Well, for many people on the spiritual path, it becomes also a bit suspicious if there are too many miracles, because then people's mind can get fixed much more on that level instead of really going for the essential, hoping to do practice in order to be able to do miracles. And that is not really the point of it. But Yogananda, he was one early Indian missionary where there is very little was known in the West of the Indian philosophy of yoga. And so he knew what is catching the Westerners' attention. so he was talking all these miraculous stories, always also somehow pointing, but don't get stuck with the idea of being able to perform miracles. But it's why, you ask me why it's not so popular, because if you do this kind of practice, it's a real commitment that basically you should do them on and on and on and on. And not so many people are ready to make such a commitment.
Okay.
Yeah, but I cannot tell you more details about the technique. It's really, if you should decide that you want to practice that, then you should get initiated by a Kriya Yoga line teacher. Yeah.
No, I'm not really want to change my path, but he speaking about it very, how to say, very good, very
right.
Looking.
He's inspiring people. He's inspiring people to do Kriya Yoga. He talks about the Kriya Yoga key, thinking that for anybody possible to get really beyond everything if they just do Kriya Yoga. Well, it's not that simple. It's not that we have to learn a particular technique and then the technique is doing anything. Technique, as I have been saying many times, technique is just a crutch for the mind. And there are not really miraculous techniques. It depends the person. If somebody resonates with a technique, then that is very useful for that person, and for the other person it may not work at all. It's not a sure given that if you practice a certain technique, then you will go beyond. What matters is much more that we learn to be alert here now, and all these practices, all these techniques, they help us with that, but that's basically their job. And you can do something very simple, like just breathing consciously, or you can do something very elaborate and learn a lot of little tricks and use them. But the point is still that practicing that helps you to become more self-aware in the present, in the timelessness, and not to become an adept in a particular technique.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
But I can understand how it influences you. I remember when I read that book, I also for sometimes I thought I should practice Kriya Yoga.
Yeah.
But then my path went another way, and I'm not regretting anything. But even after that, just as I said before to Corinne, in the beginning, that I was sitting and nothing was happening, and sometimes I thought if I would practice a technique like Kriya Yoga, most probably something would be happening now. And it's also possible that there would have been experiences, but these experiences, they are also not important. What is important is really that simple thing of detaching from our me personality and becoming self-aware in one way or another. With technique, without techniques, with this technique, with that technique. And it's not that one technique is a miracle that just helps everybody. You have to be in sympathy with it. You have to resonate with it. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you, understand.
Yeah, right. Hari Om, Dayal.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
There are so many practices. But they are all perfectly valid. And it's good not to take the practices too serious, but use them as a help. As a help to become self-aware and not get too much stuck on the details of the practice. Okay, I'm keeping quiet. Somebody try to come in? Ah, hello, Maria.
Hari Om, Werner.
Hari Om.
My question is about guidance.
Yes.
Inner guidance. I remember from the interview I saw from you that a couple of people, Corinne, I think is her name,
Yeah.
was doing to you. And you were talking about some of the phases in your life where you made big changes.
Yes.
Like going to India, coming back to Germany, some of these big decisions. And that was one of the things that stayed with me during the interview. And I remember in my life as well, when there are those moments that I feel guided, it feels really good. So my question is about if you could speak a bit more about it, because I have a strong tendency, like suppose most of us, to go into thinking mode very quickly.
Yes.
And then trying to work it out. Is it good to do this, to do that? And so I go through phases. I've gone through phases where I feel very in tune with inner guidance.
Right.
But then I go through the phases where I get very lost in thinking.
Right.
So if you could elaborate a bit on that, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, everybody is connected with that. Deep down, everybody knows where it's going along. But then we have, over such a long time, developed so strong the habit to be always on that thinking level and thinking everything out, and usually thinking in ways of how me personally can squeeze out some benefit and not really what is good for the self. And so it seems to be so difficult to connect with that knowing source because of that habit of always thinking everything through and thinking in terms of personal gain. Now, you cannot just decide, okay, from now on, I'm listening to that inner guide and that works. You can open your heart that you really want to feel from the depth of your being where things are going along. And by practicing, gradually one starts to feel it better. In the meantime, don't get fooled so easily, because when we do that, the mind is very tricky and can somehow like pretend as if it comes from the depth, but actually I'm thinking it out. Even when deep down I would know it's better to go left side now and not right, but something in me would be very interested in going right, will create that feeling that feels like intuition and tell me to go right. And so we may be misguided many times, but if you keep on intending that your heart is opening, that you're becoming more and more really deep down honest with yourself, the more you do that, the more it starts to work. But then when you're in a situation, you have to decide and you don't know, you don't really feel from the depth that guidance, then come back to your usual, in that situation, to your usual way of dealing with situation and just do that which makes the most amount of sense. And many times it's very much in tune with what comes from the depth, that if you feel there is sort of like a message coming out from your depth, from yourself, and you have no doubt, then you can just follow it. But if you feel something vague and you start to doubt and you start to think about it, then just maybe accept, okay, I can't really feel it, so let me just do what is the most reasonable. That which makes the most amount of sense. But we can include in that decision making not to try to see the situation not from the egoistic standpoint, but from what I have understood, what I know, what the self is about, and try to think reasonable from that perspective. That already helps also to open the heart, that sometimes it just happens without you asking for it, that you get guided. And as you gain experience with it, you will have more and more faith in it, trust it more. That doesn't mean once we are guided from within that after that we don't have any difficulties anymore in our life. Sometimes we may be guided into difficulties just because that may be very useful to learn, to grow, to make the next step, to face difficult situations. So that inner guidance will not prevent it. We cannot think that if something turns out difficult, oh, that was not a good guidance because it should be smooth and harmonious. Many times it will be like this, and the general tendency is that things fall more and more in place, but sometimes it's also very useful to face difficult situations and learn to deal with them, being more and more detached and less overwhelmed by them. So there is not really a magic trick you can use. Just keep on practicing listening to your inner guidance, and then by practicing it, you become more certain about it. And there may be moments where you have no doubt and you just follow. And moments where you are not so sure and you follow, and then in the course of the process, either you become aware, maybe I have it influenced with my wishful thinking more than with my listening, or maybe it has really, even when I was not sure in the beginning, it has really been a very helpful pointer, and it's good to go that way. As you practice, you get more faith in it.
Connected to that is this thing about.
Sorry, there's something wrong with your sound. I'm hearing you very torn up.
Is it better now?
Oh yes, now I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, connected. That's very helpful. Thank you. Very, very helpful. Connected with that is this experience of sometimes it feels as if thy will be done. To open up to God's will is right. It feels like the right thing. Right. Like just saying thy will be done, in a way, is like, to me, it's like opening to guidance. It's like, show me the way, because God, universe, whatever, is intelligent and loving. And at the same time, I go through the phases where I feel I have to choose.
Right.
And there is like, yeah, sometimes I go through this a bit of confusion about up to what point do I need to like take a more active choice? Is there such a thing? What is your experience on that? What do you say about that?
Actually, it comes down to the question, is there at all any free will in it? Right. Right. And what you mentioned first, okay, you can try to be in harmony with God's will, but God's will is not different than the inner guidance you are getting from your own self, because your own self is in total harmony with the total divinity. So whether you call it's coming from yourself or it's God's will, it's the same. It's more just a difference of attitude. Now, can we at all choose anything? Or is it just fixed and we are just puppets and have no say in it? It's the age-old question. Philosophers have been fighting about it since ever and ever. There are the two extremes. On one hand, the extreme teaching is, yes, of course, you have free will every moment. You can choose exactly what you want to do or not. It's absolutely up to you. And there is the opposite extreme and says you have absolutely no choice. Everything is somehow predetermined and there is no way that you can choose anything. Even what you think or feel about it, you cannot choose anything. And neither of these extremes is totally right and neither of these extremes is totally wrong. I have no doubt there is a divine will at the base of this creation. And everything that is happening within this creation has to be somehow within this divine will, in tune with this divine will. But part of the divine will is also that consciousness manifest has its own creativity. That's the point of it, that consciousness comes, dives into this magic show and gets experience and goes through the whole damn story and something there is being accumulated. Something is growing, and if it was just a mechanical clock that has some time before time been decided about every damn little thing that is ever going to happen in creation, it would be, I mean, the very notion is absurd. It's more like the creation is coming out of the now, of the timelessness. Out of that flows the sense of time, of past and future, and of our being a manifestation within this time space continuum. Now, every time some consciousness is tuning into that, every time a being is born in this world, we may be carrying our baggage with us already. Let us now not go too much into where it's coming from, but when a baby is born, a skilled astrologer may already make a horoscope and tell a whole life story how this is going to happen to that being manifest. So there is that destiny there. Now, as long as we are never stopping, as long as we are just completely identifying with that person, me, that I think I am, then invariably we will react totally as expected. So quite predictable, and that story that was being seen as a probability will just unwind itself. but there is always that possibility to just stop, to sort of like step out of time and space. And here now, in that timelessness, there is no destiny, there is no karma, there is no cause and effect. You are connected with that potential, with that creativity, with the beauty of existence. And every time you turn your attention back to that, at that moment you step out of destiny. And from there flows something new and unpredictable, beautiful into your story. That the more you live in the present, the less destiny has power, and the more you can really apply your own creativity. There is, in the Advaita teaching, there is very much the thing, don't be the doer, don't be the doer, so let things just take their course. And I came from that side, and very much then I'm not the doer, I'm not the doer, but of course, then from moment to moment, I still felt I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing everything, I'm choosing, but then at a certain moment, it was really like a cosmic force took over. And it was not a concept, but an experience. I'm not the doer. Everything just happens. And in a way, it was a great liberation of the whole responsibility about the past and the guilt and everything hanging on to. You can let go if you don't feel that you did things. But at the same time, I became aware, but hey, this is just a state. If you experience that, it's very helpful. But this is just a state, this is not a final word. Then you have to go beyond that and then again activate your capacities that you have brought into this game, into this human game, into this story, and playfully start to decide and use your capacities, your preferences. Nothing wrong with that if you are not getting attached to it. So we can choose at least what we attempt to do. Whether we are being successful or not, that is not lying in our hands. And we can accept that the outcome of it as God's will. You can bring your creative impulse into the situation, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But that the situation right now exists as it exists, there are influences from so many sides, from so many levels, and our creative impulse is just one aspect of many aspects. And many times when we do that, it may tip the scale and things may go the way we think, but many times it may not, in spite of doing that. So you can accept that you have the choice whether you attempt something, whether you bring your intent and your creativity into the situation, but whether you are successful or not, whether it's working or not, doesn't really lie in your hands. Actually, and it's not that finally you get a final, total, clear, understandable answer. Is there free will? Is there no free will? Do you have choice? Do you not have choice? Because there is no final answer. It changes. The God's will, sometimes cosmic will take over and push things in a certain way, try what you want. And sometimes you're being given a bit a line. The rule of thumb is the more you are consciously conscious in the present, the longer the line is getting. And the more actually you're taking over in a way responsibility for your actions and for your life and for your destiny. But I said there is no final answer, and actually there need not be. The point comes not that you have the final answer, it's like this or like that, but it doesn't matter anymore. You're just playfully going from moment to moment, and don't worry whether what you are doing is God's will or whether it's your own will. It's just somehow blending together.
Yeah, I feel intent. You've mentioned intent.
Right.
Is what feels like, in a way, it's like the only thing to do. It feels like the only thing to do is to I mean, the self-awareness, of course, but the intent when it comes to action.
Right.
And yeah.
That makes all the difference. What kind of intention is behind an action? You can do a very similar action and have a very destructive, negative intention, or you can do a very similar action and have a very creative, helpful, expansive intention, and that will put something very different in that current of life. Right. And the intention we can influence. Still, out of old habits, the intention will have the tendency to slip in old habitual pattern all the time. But we can tell ourselves to be alert, become aware of it, and consciously counteract the power of habits, and in that way also consciously counteract the power of destiny.
Thank you so much,
You're
Werner.
welcome.
Very, very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hari Om. Hari Om. You are all divine beings. You're all connected with that divinity, with the divine creativity, with the divine beauty. We all have access to that. Without that, we wouldn't be here. The person, the role that we are playing in this world may have limitations, what we can and cannot do. But as a being, we have access to staggering potential. And the more we bring the attention to the present, connect with that, the more will flow in our life, and the less whatever has been decided how things should happen, those clouds of probabilities that are there, those clouds that say it most probably it will turn out like this or turn out like that, the more they can be neutralized. Still, as long as one is manifesting in this world, one is subject to the divine will. There are two levels who are usually talked about and put as synonyms on the same level, and they are not. One is destiny, and one is a cosmic will, God's will. And destiny has its own power, has its own momentum, but as I said to Maria, the more we are in that timelessness, the more we are stepping out of destiny. Here now, there is no karma. There's no cause and effect. There's simply that bubbling, beautiful potential. The more you connect with that, the less power destiny has. Still, you may not be after that all the time busy trying to adjust your destiny. Let the destiny take its course, but you have that possibility when you see something coming subtly, and you know out from experience, usually I'm just getting swept away by it. tuning into it and go along with it, and I know already invariably it just creates suffering. There you can put a blocker and say, no, I'm not going down that alley anymore, in spite of destiny pushing strongly. The more we are capable of bringing the attention to the timelessness, the less the powers within time can push you around. But there is a divine will, God's will, that is at the base of this creation. And as long as we are manifesting in this creation, then we have to somehow be in harmony or being pushed by the divine will. But somebody who comes really back to that divine nature has also usually absolutely no intention to work against the divine will. But if for some reason a being becomes aware of that divine essence and doesn't want to play along anymore in this world, that being simply will decide to get out of this world, get out of this creation. As long as we are manifest in this creation, we are subject to that divine will, but the divine will is totally benevolent. It's not a God that is up there somewhere, always standing in judgment and punishing for our bad things and rewarding for our good things. There is just a divine will, totally incomprehensible, but totally benevolent, a total goodwill. And it's not a yoke to be subject to that divine will, but it's liberation of detaching from the me, ID, personal will, and tuning into the divine will. And part of the divine will is that every consciousness manifest has that possibility. There are those teachings that you have not even a say what you are feeling, how you are reacting emotionally. You don't have a say what you are thinking. Everything is fixed, and this is not true. There is always the possibility, at least to attempt, not to get into the old emotional patterns. And the more we are making use of that right, of that freedom, the stronger it becomes, the more powerful we become. Okay, there I'm talking again. Is there anybody who would like to come in? Please come. You want me to go on talking and talking?
Okay, I will put a question.
Hello, Lutz.
Hello, Werner. You just talked about the divine will as totally benevolent.
Yes.
And when we look at great teachers, or at least spiritual teachers who have a great influence on many, many people and create some big movements, missions and whatever, it seems to often happen that for some time they are very pure. That means these movements and things, they stick to a very high ideal.
Yeah.
And it is wow. And then after some time, often very strange things are happening.
Yeah.
These now spiritual teachers, masters, gurus, however you want to call them, they also themselves do very, very strange things which seem to not benefit the people affected by those things. And something like a big scandal is created.
Yeah.
And all the devotees are wondering, why on earth is he or she doing that? What's the good intent here? Why? What is that? And often, in the end, there is no. One can kind of rationalize all sorts of things. Yeah, he had to do that because this had to happen, or this person had to have this karma, and he has to learn about that, and blah blah blah. But still, there's often some kind of a remaining impression that it is just pure madness.
Yeah.
What the, people have done. There's no logical explanation. It doesn't help anybody. It's often very destructive, very disruptive to the innocent faith of all the people connecting with the teacher. And still, it happens quite often. Do you have any kind of input in that without getting into the particular teachers or the particular thing?
Right, I'm not going, definitely not going to start to tell this teacher is good, this teacher is bad. Whatever they did is good or not good. But of course, you're right. It's sometimes very difficult to accept that there may be a totally benevolent intent behind certain teachers' actions. And it's also true that from the human viewpoint, you may not be able to see the whole picture and also not really be able to judge whether this is true or whether maybe the teacher has just somehow totally succumbed to the temptation of self-aggrandizement, being worshipped all over the world or by many people, and then develop a new ego there and fall prey to that. I mean, many teachers, it may happen that they have good intentions, pure intentions in the beginning, but then get overwhelmed and are not quite yet ready to handle all that adulation that they may get, and then get into difficulties. But what does it mean for the sadhak, for the devotee? How to deal with that? And you are not obliged to keep on defending teachers and think yes, yes, and rationalize whatever they are doing. You just listen to your heart, and you watch your own experience. If you are at all connected with a teacher, if you are not connected and you hear stories and you feel, oh, it's not for me, then you just follow that and done with it. Then you know, okay, it's not my cup of tea. I'm just not going near that. If you have a connection, then you listen, you really deep down listen to your own experience more than to all the stories. And if you feel there is something very beneficial happening to you, then you listen to that and don't listen to all the stories and connect with that aspect, with that pure connection that you feel. And don't worry about all the stories and what people think and say. the possibility of the teachers having or to be that teachers are quite in a good state, but still vulnerable, and they may fall into the trap when they become famous, when people come after them, that they get overwhelmed by that and they cannot more handle it creatively. And then there may be a lot of nonsense coming out of it. And if you feel such a thing with a teacher, with a group, and you feel that's okay, I prefer not to have anything to do with it, then you just keep out of the way and don't connect with them. And if you are already connected and some things happen and happens and you have difficulty with that, then don't fix your attention on that level, but fix your attention on your connection with the teacher, with the teaching, with what is happening at the base of that. And if you feel that benevolence, if you feel that there is something expansive and beautiful there, then just connect with that and don't worry about the whole rest. Don't try to finally understand, because you may not understand what is happening. Listen to your heart and not the head.
I was also thinking about your own story, because you shared with us in the past that for some time Amma in that case also told nonsense about you.
Yes.
Told you have done things wrong, and you have drunk too much alcohol and therefore you cannot go anywhere, or something like that. Some kind of provocative nonsense and some kind of obvious provocations, but somehow this was also part of your learning to kind of trust your inner guidance, kind of be not provoked by that. Do not get lost in that. So can, in a way, these other strange activities by other great teachers also be seen in this direction, that they are a test for the kind of lovingness of the disciple whose love is stronger for the good aspect of the guru than his madness, kind of not get kind of hooked up to the madness. This is maybe part of the game. I mean, that's the do you have to accept, if you really strongly connect with a teacher, that you have also to accept his madness in a way?
If you really totally get into that relationship, guru disciple, then basically you accept, okay, I accept all the madness. But you can also have a relationship with a teacher that, okay, the teacher is guiding me, but still you keep your autonomy. So you cannot give a general valid answer to your question, because each situation is unique a bit. One relationship, everyone's relationship with a teacher is something unique. And it may be to a point that no matter what madness is there, it doesn't matter at all. I just fix my attention to that positive, expansive, creative aspect, and the whole rest doesn't touch me. But you may also have a strong relationship and not necessarily be so ready to just make the step to the end and still benefit from that relationship with the teacher, that you remind yourself again and again when the mind wants to slip into but why is he doing that, why is she doing that, why is this, why is that, and what that person has they benefited in the long run. Maybe they are destroyed in the long run. People who are not well may benefit from what they are going through. And it's no point in looking around, but listen to one's own heart and see, okay, what do I really deep down feel? And then let be guided by that and not by all the mental constructions, by the mental doubts. Is it good? Is it not good? But listen to, feel your own experience with that teacher and decide with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hari Om. Just in that connection, I mean, in my story, I had wild periods in my story with my teacher, Amma. There was a period when I thought it's all lost and she has miscalculated and all is lost and all that faith I had was misplaced, simply to later find out she knew perfectly well what's going on and was pushing me through a story. And in a way, the worse it was, the more I'm benefiting now from it. The worse it was, I was forced to go deeper into my own resources. And it's like that it opened taps of energy that are simply open because of that. And of course, everybody knows there have been all kinds of controversies around her and her story. I couldn't, even being here in Tiruvannamal, I am not following too much all the news about it. I couldn't possibly avoid because so many Amma devotees used to come and come very upset to me and say, Werner, this and that is happening and. And I can just say what I said to Lutz. I'm looking at my own experience with Amma. Although there have been periods where I was really angry at her. Later, from another perspective, I saw what she has done was perfectly in tune with the divine will and giving me opportunities to really make steps, not forcing me to make steps, but giving opportunities. Whether I like the way those opportunities were placed or not, still those opportunities were there. And the more time that passes and I look back at that story, the more I can just say it was just absolutely a total masterpiece what she did with this crazy fellow. And there's absolutely no anger left. There's only a profound gratitude for that help that she has given me. At the same time, I'm very grateful also that I feel she has totally given me the freedom to go my own way now. But I mean, this is my experience, and that's why no matter, Lutz mentioned that sometimes she was telling all kinds of things about me. When I left the last time, also when I left the first time, but when I left the last time, of course it was creating a bit consternation. I was there, the ascetic in the cave, and then coming out and walking away in a relationship that was creating a lot of trouble in many people's mind. And so she certainly didn't defend what I was doing. Because she didn't want this to become a role model for the people who are living there. So she said all kinds of stuff I was aware of that I didn't mind. It was actually, as Lutz said, it was another test not to get attached to them. not to react. And in a way, actually, I was very happy because in that way, she protected me from a continuous stream of runaway Amma devotees knocking at my door. If she had been positive about me, I would have had all the runaways of Amma Ashram at my door all the time. And since she was in the beginning very negative, then I was being left in peace. Now, as the time has passed, I think the general attitude has changed. But no matter what, I always knew, I always felt in my heart that there is absolutely no fight between Amma and myself. That everything is perfectly all right between the two of us, no matter what she was telling externally. And now, when after all these years, when I see her, she manifests it also. Anyhow, enough of my story. Lutz has invoked it. It's all your fault, Lutz, that I start to blubber away like this. Is there anybody else who would like to come in? Please come in.
Hello, Werner.
Hello, Nelly.
Some time ago, you talked with Helen about the pray and about this way of heart, and I found out something in myself that this is very close to me, and that I do something like this. I talk with God and I say something like, yes, yes, God, yes. And I feel that some relaxation inside me and some surrender. And when I heard this talk with her, I felt this touched me, and I feel it, this connection. That and when I thought about this, I thought that maybe this is like one more anchor to come to myself. When I watch my breath, I come back to my breath, to my sensations in my nose or in my belly or in something else. Or when I ask a question, where am I, for example, when I have a lot of thoughts in my head, sometimes I ask myself, where am I, to feel what is under all these thoughts, and it helps to come back to myself. But sometimes I just say yes, and yes, God, and it helps me to accept whatever it is, whatever it happens. So I noticed that this is something the same, just different anchors, but they lead to the same thing, to back to myself.
Right, exactly. You put this out as a statement or more as a question, whether this is so?
I wanted just to share what I noticed, and I wanted to share it with you what you say about it is, and I see that you agree.
Right, actually, it is true. Like just watching your breath or just doing self-inquiry can be a path that for a long time feels very dry. Eventually, it will also really go deep enough to become more juicy. But for quite some time, this may feel very dry, and then people get disheartened by it. But if you can combine it with the devotion, the devotional heart, then your path will be much easier. And definitely, connecting with God, connecting with the self, connecting with the universe, connecting with something totally abstract, it's all the same. And devotion is a very great help to continue sincerely on the path and not just try it a little and give it up and try it a little, but the devotion makes the path much smoother and easier to go. And if you have that mental makeup that you can combine the different aspects of it like that, then you have a great advantage. By all means, continue doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Werner.
You're welcome.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Is there anybody else who would like to come in? We can make a few minutes more, if you so want. But it seems nobody is eager to talk. Okay, let's stop the official part of the satsang for today.